Hey Dan, my name is Clemence. I work as a freelance product designer. I live in Barcelona and I'm currently part of the design team at Front.
Clemens, thank you so much for joining.
Hey Dan!
I wanted to talk to you today about your experience with product design, and I was wondering if you could tell me what you think the biggest problem that product teams are facing right now.
Well, in my experience, and it's partially because I went from development to design, one of the challenges that I find is collaborating between developers and designers because we use very different methodologies that have sort of different time frames and ways of getting organized. So in finding ways to cross these two methodologies.
If you could only pick one methodology, which is your preferred way to develop a product?
I don't think there's one. That's the thing. I'm going to take a reference of the context that I'm working right now. And so, for example, the development team works in Scrum, so they have weekly goals and weekly tasks. And in design, we would work more in a design thinking methodology where there's different steps that we have to go through because we have to go through a research and ideating and testing phases. But we also have to do all of this sort of in advance of the development. So some people call it dual track agile, but the principle is that there's two lanes, a discovery lane and a development lane. And so, or a track, they call it.
Yeah.
And so I would work in the discovery track and the developers would work in the delivery track. And there are parallels in between. There are collaborations for sure. But this idea of the two tracks is what I find the easier to apply.
And how do you prioritize product features when you've gone through this process? What's your top tip for prioritizing?
So there's different resources where that could help us make decision. There's the user research.
Yep.
So ideally, we like to constantly do exploratory research to identify the biggest needs of our users. And then there's often always a way to get feedback about feature requests from users. So whether it's by email or by the calls that our marketing team has with them, we try to log all of them in a tool to track all of the request features. And then out of all of this and some of the usage data, we kind of sit together and with the product owner, we decide what are the next things we want to work on.
And for you, is it data or is it user interviews or is it surveys? How do you prefer to get this user feedback?
So each type of methodology is for a different use case. So we would do, when it's exploratory research, we would do user interviews or we would do an annual survey where we would grasp more of the quantitative data, but it all depends on the type of data you're looking for. So early on in the design process, you get more user interviews where you have more exploratory data, and then you'll go into ideation, and then you'll have to go through other phases of research, which is more testing. So you do user testing, which can also be one-on-one testing, or it could be group focus groups. And then the data for me is really used to inform the decision. So we always use the data to back up and have a better understanding of how people use the tool, but more in terms of quantitative. And another thing we do to get quantitative data are surveys that we can send, but there's only a certain amount of information you can get within a survey. So each one of these methodologies are different, and you just need to really, before doing any research, think of what is the best methodology depending on what type of information you're trying to get.
Before we move on there, actually, so I always think that like outreach is one of the hardest parts of getting user interviews. What's your approach of getting this pipeline filled up and getting people to come and agree to sit down with you for 5 minutes?
What is really key before doing any research is planning it properly and thinking of what data you want to have access to and what type of person you want to talk to. So you're not going to reach out to your entire list of customers. You want to clearly identify who you want to talk to and target them properly so that the message that you're going to send is also going to talk to them. And then we always offer an incentive because people's time is we want to show them that it's worth for us, it's worth something. And yeah, just being clear about your expectation on what you're looking for and making things as easy as possible for them. So they shouldn't have to read through a long text or try to find how to book you. So I would always try to make it as short and sweet as possible with a clear link. Yeah.
Do you use LinkedIn? Do you just outreach to people on LinkedIn, or is it?
It depends. It depends who you want to talk to. If it's your users, you probably have their information, or maybe some of your users already agreed to be contacted, and then you already have a list of people that you can reach out to. If it's prospects, yeah, you could go through LinkedIn. Ideally, and what we have in the company that I work on now, we have a research operations team, which job it is to help us recruit people. And that can be an entire job in itself, like it's a lot of effort. And what they do sometimes is they go through agencies that do all of the recruiting for us. So we tell them the criteria of the people we want to talk to, and these people help us get to those people. It's a job, like it's not easy.
Yeah, it's a hard one. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk to you about then, through the lens of product design, what are your top picks for product design tools right now? What tools can you not live without?
So they're not necessarily all tools to design, but there are 3 tools that I go on every single day, or maybe even more, but in regards of organization and design, first would be Notion. I do everything in Notion, both personally and professionally, to document anything. I find it super practical because it can be everything in one place. Like before I had my Trello, I had my Google Drive, and these are still awesome tools, but now I kind of have everything in Notion, which is the best. I've always used Miro a lot in design, especially since I do more information architecture and UX type of research, and historically I've done less UI, so I've used Miro for everything, which is basically a whiteboarding tool. And obviously I use Figma for everything interface design related. And now Figma has also launched FigJam, which is also a whiteboarding tool, so you can use them side by side, which is very practical.
That's FigJam.
You can link your design file to your brainstorming files, which are whiteboarding tools, and vice versa. And they also have this philosophy of a lot of widgets and plugins that you can add. So a lot of people from the community can also add their creativity to it, which is really cool.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.